my channel. This is Psychic Medium Raymond Guzman, and today I'm going to be doing a celebrity psychic reading on the most beautiful woman in the world, Miss Marilyn Monroe, also known, I believe, as Norma Jean Baker, which was her real name. But yeah, she was ultimately, she is still an icon, and she is a symbol of beauty in the world. And what I get with her in her passing is that there was just a lot, but I'm going to be talking about her passing, things that I felt that, that are important messages that need to come forth right now, and exactly who was Marilyn. What I get with Marilyn is that she definitely had a gentle soul. She was very much, someone who she knew she was confident in her own self and her beauty and the image that she maintained, but she wasn't always like that. So I get in her childhood years, in her young years, growing up, she would have felt a little displaced. She would have had, felt like she maybe wasn't as beautiful as the other girls. So she went through a lot of these emotional periods in her life. Also, I get she may have had like an eating disorder early on in her lifetime, um, where she would turn later on to food to really focus on, dealing with her emotions and her depression. But she was someone who, rose to fame for, uh, her beauty and for acting and for, just being Marilyn. And she was immersed into this spotlight. But I feel like when I tune into her soul, that she was a very conscientious and very body conscious about herself. So she was almost like her worst critic when it came days, she felt like, that she sort of had like self-loathing, the best way I can describe it, self-loathing of her own body, her own image, and she went through fluctuations in weight and in her image and her life. She also had a lot of karmic lessons in this lifetime when she was here on earth, in physical form. She basically went through several marriages, several relationships, had affairs, and all of this was because of past life karmic lessons that followed her into this life. And so she really never found what we would call true love, but she did, love, um, everyone that was around her. She loved her fans, but she did feel so lonely, and even though she may have had fame and had money at the time, it just wasn't enough for Marilyn. She always was seeking more, and she had a lot of hopes that, her future, her career would go further. Um, but what I do get with Marilyn is that, um, she had also a lot of jealousy that she had to deal with, being a sex symbol in the 1940s, 50s. She was known as the, this sex symbol in a world of men. And back then, it was almost like Elvis Presley when he started, dancing. When in his younger years, they wouldn't film from his waist down because it was too scandalous and provocative. Again, this goes back to the 3D, third dimension, of consciousness, and how people back in the 1940s and 50s were, socially programmed to think that if a woman, dressed a certain way, she was automatically labeled, as being something that she wasn't. She was labeled as, you know, I'm not going to say the word, but you know what I'm saying, an easy person. So basically, this is something that she dealt with a lot. And I think a lot of times the media back then would also focus on her, being pictured, whether she was at a book signing or, she was at in a certain event and she was just socializing, with these men, because a lot of men gravitated towards her because she radiated beauty and had this pure soul about her. A lot of these photographers and people who would photograph her, would take it out of context and automatically label her as having an affair with someone when she really wasn't. I do get that she was very loyal, though, when she was with her, with her, um, with her spouses that she did marry and the people that she was in a relationship. But then there was a lot of temptation, being that she was in the spotlight. So she had a lot of temptation, and she would sometimes have an affair. I mean, she did falter, but there's a lot of people living now that, that are do worse than what Marilyn did, and they don't even get half of the treatment that Marilyn would have received. Times are so different, and the bullying back then was a lot worse for women like Marilyn, who were in a male-dominated world, and they really didn't have a voice. She used her beauty almost as a platform to kind of be a voice for women in many ways. But I think a lot of people would say now in retrospect that she kind of over-sexualized herself in a lot of ways, and it was kind of demeaning for women at that time. But in Marilyn's mind, what I get from her soul, is that at that time she was trying to actually break barriers and put women outside the box and let them know they can be comfortable in their own skin. At the same time, though, she was having a lot of inner struggles, depression. She would turn, to pills and certain medications to kind of deal with her anxiety. She had a lot of anxiety attacks early on in her career, and this crippled her a little bit and made her, there was days where she was in a lot of pain. She just couldn't get out of bed, and she didn't want to, um, she really couldn't, function. And a lot of people were kept pushing her because, like, just like, modern celebrities that we see, they treat them, even back then, they treated her like a machine. They wanted her to do movies, to do press conferences, to go and, socialize. But what if, she was feeling sick, or it was, a certain thing that she was going through and she just didn't feel like doing it? She had no choice. She had to go. And so, if she didn't, then the press would have, a field day thinking, writing all these, stupid things about Marilyn. So they treated her more like an object than an actual human being. And I feel like her soul suffered a lot here in this physical world when she was alive, because she tried to, find herself. And to a certain point, she was like, I get from her strongly, like she wanted to just like say, screw it all, keep the money, keep the fame. I don't need any of this aggravation. It's just so much weight that she was carrying, and a lot of the men just wanted, like, that came in contact with her or paid her with compliments. All they really wanted was to go and, and have an affair with her, a one night stand. They saw her as, as this beautiful woman, and that, that she was, easy in a lot of ways, and that wasn't who Marilyn was. That's the story that a lot of, again, people that would have been jealous. There was a lot of women that were actresses as well at that time that she, had to face a lot of their jealousy and rumors being spread by them and their husbands. People in the entertainment industry, in Hollywood. Uh, it was just so much that she had to go through. But ultimately, she fought, and she did, come out of this depressive period that she had towards the end of her career before she was, she passed. And so I got that she had a lot of, uh, almost like an awakening, a spiritual awakening towards the end, a couple of years, maybe about 2 or 3 years before her passing. She would have, had come to this reckoning, of her full life purpose, and she was going to try to, you know, carry out and be strong, for herself. And she wanted to, have family eventually, and and start a family and do all that good stuff. But she just never found in every relationship that she was in that these men, could really love her or understand her. Um, there was just so much going on at the time, and she felt like, that a lot of them, even her own spouses, that they were very controlling, and they wanted to tell her what to do, and she just didn't want that. She wanted to be able to walk out on the street and do things without being, hunted by a lot of people. Um, but she really was, and still is, a beautiful soul, and I feel like she would find comfort almost in, brushing her hair, putting her lipstick on, or having people, do that for her, do the bleaching of her hair, and putting on the beautiful dresses and the gowns, and she found, some kind of healing in her own, space, which was the world of beauty. And I guess she didn't realize at the time that when she was alive, the impact that she would have for generations to come, and that she would still be a beautiful, an icon of beauty, a symbol of beauty in the beauty world. Today, you can't go without going to like a famous museum, or go to, maybe like a memorabilia store, or go to even regular stores, and you see Marilyn's face on handbags, on t-shirts, on picture frames. She's still very relevant, and the world has kept her soul alive through, all the beauty shots and the glamour shots that these photographers took of her. I mean, you can just look, even if you were to strip back all the makeup and all the hairstyles, and you look deeply into her eyes, she was a beautiful soul, and a very pure soul. And I feel like she was taken advantage of, in many ways, and she didn't really understand it. In the midst of everything, it was like a whirlwind that she was going through when she was here. But I do get that, again, there was a lot of jealousy leading up to this. Now, getting closer to when she passed, she did see JFK, John F. Kennedy. For those of you that are, in your 20s now, or a little younger, you may not know, who JFK was, but he was one of the presidents of the United States. That's John F. Kennedy, and he was assassinated in 1963, I believe. But he I do get that that was very much true. They did have an affair. He saw Marilyn, and he saw his wife, and with Marilyn, he felt this instant soul connection. In many ways, I feel like JFK was a soulmate, a true soulmate for Marilyn. He just didn't see her as beauty. He really understood her soul, and I feel like they had conversations, and long conversations. When he met her, he was so mesmerized, and I feel like they were actual soulmates. They were meant to be together, but circumstances prevented them from being together. One being that JFK was the president of the United States, and two, that there was Marilyn was married at the time, and three, it would have been scandalous, for him to have left his wife Jackie Onassis, and divorced her just to be with Marilyn. So I feel like they did have a good relationship. They did have their laughs. He did court her, so this typically would have been an affair, in many ways. Uh, it wasn't wrong in many ways. Yes, it was wrong, but at the time it felt so right when Marilyn was in this affair with JFK. And again, because she felt like he was the only one that would have gotten her, that really understood who she was as Norma Jean, not just Marilyn Monroe, the actress, the model, the beauty, symbol. And so he saw a lot of, I feel like she bared her soul to him and entrusted him. But at the same time, we had Robert Kennedy, Robert F. Kennedy, which would have been Bobby. People refer to him more as Bobby. And I feel like Bobby also had this interest and obsession with Marilyn when he saw her. And he saw that his brother, couldn't be with her, the way that he wanted to. And so became aware of it. And I feel like he approached Marilyn, and he did visit her several times. He wanted to have an affair. And the rumor is, there's a lot of speculation that they actually did have an affair, her and Robert Kennedy, but I don't get that is the truth from the whole situation. What I get is that Marilyn would have denied Robert F. Kennedy, or Bobby, and she told him, that she didn't have the same affections or feelings for him like she had for JFK. And I feel, that it became almost like an obsession for him, and this vengeance that he would have had towards Marilyn. And in many ways, I feel like what happened was that, he was in a place of position. His brother was the president of the United States, and that, one day he says, in his mind, if I can't be with you, then no one can. And again, it became like an obsession. So I feel like what he did, what I get is that basically she was murdered, and would have been someone that he would have hired, like a hitman, to go and carry this out. And how they did it, I feel like it wasn't true to what they had said. I feel like she was poisoned. Uh, and how she was poisoned, they slipped something into her drinks that she would have had that day, that they found her body. And again, the contents, they said that were, there was a lot of speculation. People have said that that it was an enema. She used to use enemas, and that they found contents when they emptied out her stomach of prescription pills, medications, and she overdosed on, and that they claimed this was a suicide, but it wasn't a suicide. It was murder, and it was all covered up. And again, who's going to suspect the president's brother of the United States, But Marilyn's husband at the time, he did come out years later, and he did say that he did believe I believe this was DiMaggio that said it, but it was said, and a lot of people have also said that the Kennedys had something to do with the murder, and that is correct. They would have had an involvement, but not JFK. And I get when he found out that Marilyn had passed, they fell into he fell into a big depression, because again, this was his soulmate that was taken out. In many ways, they have also said that there is this big curse around the Kennedy family, and I feel like this is true. And I don't feel like this was done by a witch or anybody that would have cursed them, but more of the actions from Bobby Kennedy that carried out, and it kind of like tainted the family line. And this would have been more like a curse from the spiritual realm that, that would have been casted upon a lot of the generations of Kennedys, because if you look at all the Kennedys after JFK, there was a lot of tragedies that followed. JFK Jr., he, crashed in an airplane. And then I believe one of the Kennedys had brain cancer. And then, there was just passing after passing after passing, tragedy after tragedy. So in many ways, I feel like the universe, people would call it a curse. I call it karma, karmic balance. It kind of, took its toll, and it made justice. Justice was served. So when it comes to Marilyn's soul, I don't feel like she's restless or she feels like, that justice wasn't served. I feel like justice was served in many ways, and it's true what we say, as spiritual people, that, we are all held accountable here on earth or when we go to the spirit realm. So we are never, whatever you do, you will be held accountable for it in some kind of way. But I get that Marilyn is definitely, I feel like she has reincarnated already. I get, that she definitely would have already reincarnated. So there's a lot of people that think that perhaps, she was, I've heard things that are way out there that she was John Benet Ramsey, and that she was murdered again, and it repeated again. I've heard rumors, and speculation that she is reincarnating to Katy Perry, and there's just a lot of things, but I feel like her soul is either, either has reincarnated already or is on the verge of it, but I get reincarnation very strong with her. And so there is going to be someone that is just like her, that takes the fashion world and the beauty world by storm, and kind of it's like, the it girl, of the 21st century, of the 2000s, 2018, 19. So yeah, we definitely will feel like we have seen her soul before, when this person is, whoever it is revealed in Hollywood or in the fame. But I feel like, her soul has made that journey. And a lot of people would probably say, no, it probably takes 100 years for a soul to reincarnate. But when spirit is ready, and your life is cut short, a lot of times you're given a second opportunity, a second chance to reincarnate and come back into the world to pick up where your life ended and finish your lessons here on earth. And for her, there was a lot of karmic lessons, and she passed at a very young age, so she really didn't get to experience being old, and going through a lot more of experiences that she could have gone into. She would have been a very famous actress up until, the 1980s. And then, she would have done other things like her own makeup line, things like that. But again, her soul is very much living in the world right now, even though she's, reincarnated through, her memories as Marilyn Monroe and her photographs, and again, just these iconic memories and snapshots in time that people still that are alive that may have saw her in Hollywood, or people who, that idolized her and that still idolize her. And a lot of people have her possessions. They have like her grand piano, her baby white grandbaby piano, and they have dresses of Marilyn in museums and shoes and jewelry. So yeah, she definitely will continue to live on. I really feel like it was a very bad situation that she had to face. But ultimately she did get to experience what it was to be truly loved and to find her soulmate, even though it couldn't work out in this lifetime. And I feel like up in heaven, her soul did align with JFK before she reincarnated, and they were able to actually be happy together in many ways. But I get that she is okay, and so yeah, that is what I am receiving from Spirit. And if you like this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you have anybody that you suggest that I do a celebrity psychic reading or mediumship type of reading, please comment below. Also, you can follow me on Facebook and Instagram. And if you'd like to set up a private reading, all of these links will be listed in the description box below. Have an amazing day. Blessings and love and light to all.